The $950 job that changed everything. Victoria Hale stood alone in the executive garage at 11 p.m., rain hammering against the concrete overhead, staring at her phone with trembling hands. Her regular driver had quit without notice. Tomorrow's investor meeting would determine whether she kept control of the company she'd built from nothing, or lost everything to a hostile takeover. She had exactly 8 hours to reach the mountain resort 400 miles away. The only available driver was a single father with a beat-up sedan who'd just quoted her $950 for 3 days of work. She'd paid more for lunch. But something in his voice, steady, unhurried, sincere, made her say yes. Neither of them knew that decision would unravel everything they thought they understood about worth, love, and what truly mattered. Before we begin, I want to invite you on this journey. Watch this story to the very end. I promise it will surprise you. And please, hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The rain came down in sheets, turning the Seattle streets into rivers of reflected neon. Victoria Hale stood beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of the executive parking garage, her Valentino heels clicking against the polished concrete as she paced in tight, controlled circles. Her phone felt heavy in her hand, the screen glowing with the confirmation message from a driver she'd never met. Noah Bennett, Toyota Camry. License verified. Will arrive in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. She'd built a $200 million logistics company by controlling every variable, anticipating every contingency, eliminating every risk, and now her entire future depended on a stranger with a 7-year-old sedan. This is insane, she muttered, pressing 2 fingers against her temple where a headache had been building for hours. Her reflection stared back at her from a nearby car window, perfectly styled dark hair beginning to frizz in the humidity. Designer suit still crisp despite 18 hours of wear, eyes shadowed with exhaustion she refused to acknowledge. The hostile takeover attempt by Meridian Capital had been brewing for months, but she'd underestimated how ruthless they'd be. 3 board members had already flipped. Tomorrow's investor meeting at Cascade Mountain Resort was her last chance to secure enough votes to maintain control. 400 miles. 8 hours of driving through mountain passes. And her regular driver Marcus, who'd been with her for 5 years, had sent his resignation via text message at 9:30 tonight. Family emergency. Can't continue. Sorry for the inconvenience. Inconvenience. She'd almost laughed. This wasn't an inconvenience. It was a calculated betrayal. Marcus had been on Meridian's payroll. She was certain of it. The timing was too perfect. She'd called every car service in the city, all booked solid or refusing to do long-distance runs on such short notice. Finally, her assistant had found a private driver through a secondary platform. Noah Bennett, high ratings, available immediately, willing to do a multi-day contract. $950 for 3 days. The amount was almost insulting. Victoria spent more than that on a single pair of shoes. But desperation had a way of recalibrating perspective. Headlights swept across the garage entrance. Victoria straightened automatically, smoothing her jacket, rebuilding the armor of composure that had taken years to perfect. Control the narrative. Control the first impression. Control everything. The car that pulled up was modest. A silver Toyota Camry, clean but clearly well used, with a small dent in the rear passenger door. Not what she was accustomed to, but it would have to do. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. Victoria's first thought was that he didn't look like a driver. Most of the professionals she'd worked with carried themselves with a certain practiced deference, a service industry polish that kept appropriate distance. This man moved with quiet confidence. No hurry, no performance. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with dark hair slightly mussed from the rain and broad shoulders that filled out a simple navy jacket. His face was striking in an understated way, strong jaw, thoughtful eyes, the kind of features that improved with attention rather than demanding it. "Ms. Hale?" His voice matched what she'd heard on the phone. Steady, warm, utterly calm. "I'm Noah Bennett." "You're early." Victoria glanced at her watch. 17 minutes since his confirmation. People were never early anymore. Traffic was lighter than expected. Noah gestured toward the Camry. "I've already loaded your luggage specifications into GPS. 412 miles to Cascade Mountain Resort, with current weather conditions factoring in approximately 7.5 hours of drive time. I planned for 8 to build in contingency." Victoria blinked. That was thorough. You've researched the route. Of course. He said it as if any other approach would be absurd. Mountain passes, weather warnings, rest stop locations, alternate routes in case of closures. I don't like surprises. Something in Victoria's chest loosened fractionally. Neither do I. Noah opened the rear passenger door and she caught a glimpse of the interior, immaculately clean with a subtle scent of cedar and mint. A phone charging cable was already positioned conveniently on the center console. A bottle of water sat in the cup holder, condensation beading on the plastic. I wasn't sure of your preferences, Noah said, following her gaze. But I brought water, coffee in the thermos up front, and some fruit if you get hungry. The drive's long. Victoria couldn't remember the last time someone had anticipated her needs without being asked. Marcus had required constant instruction, constant management. This stranger had prepared without prompting. Thank you. The words came out more genuine than she'd intended. Noah's mouth quirked in a small smile. My job is to get you there safely and on time. Everything else is just good service. He waited until she was settled before closing the door gently, not slamming it, she noticed, but with deliberate care. Then he was behind the wheel, adjusting mirrors with practiced efficiency. I need to be at the resort by 7 a.m., Victoria said, already pulling her laptop from her bag. The meeting starts at 8:30. I cannot be late. Understood. Noah glanced at her in the rear-view mirror, and for a moment their eyes met. His were brown, she realized, with flecks of amber that caught the garage lights. Perceptive eyes. Kind eyes. We'll be there by 6:45. I promise. The certainty in his voice should have been arrogant. Instead, it was just reassuring. They pulled out of the garage into the rain-slicked streets, and Victoria forced her attention to her laptop screen. Spreadsheets, projections, voting scenarios. The numbers that would determine whether she kept her company or lost everything she'd built. But she found herself distracted by the smooth competence of the man driving. He navigated the city traffic with fluid precision, not aggressive but utterly confident, always seeming to choose the lane that flowed best, anticipating lights and obstacles with uncanny timing. You've done this before, she said after 20 minutes of silence. Driving? Noah's voice held quiet amusement. Professional driving. You move like someone with training. There was a pause. I was a logistics coordinator for a shipping company before I went independent. Spent a lot of time on the road, learning routes, understanding flow. Driving's problem solving. You're always calculating vectors, speed, distance, human behavior, environmental factors. Victoria looked up from her laptop. That's exactly what it is. In the rearview mirror, she saw Noah's expression shift with something that might have been surprise. Most people think it's just pointing a car in a direction. Most people don't understand complexity. Victoria heard herself say it before she'd consciously decided to engage in conversation. There was something about the enclosed space, the rain drumming on the roof, the darkness outside the windows that created an odd intimacy. No, Noah agreed quietly. They don't. They drove in silence for another hour as the city gave way to suburbs, then to the darker stretches of highway that led toward the mountains. Victoria tried to focus on her work, but exhaustion was catching up with her. The numbers on her screen began to blur. You should rest, Noah said gently. I'll wake you when we need to stop for gas. I can't afford to rest. Victoria rubbed her eyes, aware of how sharp her voice sounded. I have too much to prepare. Respectfully, Ms. Hale. You'll be more effective tomorrow if you're not running on empty tonight. It was the kind of thing her assistant might say, or her former mentor, or the therapist she'd stopped seeing because she didn't have time for appointments. But coming from this stranger, delivered without judgment or agenda, it landed differently. You don't understand what's at stake, she said, but the fight had gone out of her voice. You're right, I don't. Noah's eyes found hers again in the mirror. But I understand that driving yourself into the ground doesn't change the outcome. It just means you face it exhausted. Victoria wanted to argue. Instead, she found herself closing the laptop. 30 minutes, she conceded. I'll rest for 30 minutes. Take whatever you need, Noah said simply. I've got the wheel. She leaned back against the seat, intending to just close her eyes for a moment. The rhythm of the car, the steady competence radiating from the man driving, the first sense of safety she'd felt in months. It all combined into a weight she couldn't resist. Victoria Hale, who controlled everything, who trusted no one, who never showed weakness, fell asleep in the back of a stranger's car. Bam! When she woke, disoriented and stiff, pale dawn light was filtering through the windows. They were parked at a rest stop, engine idling quietly. The rain had stopped. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks touched with early snow. Victoria checked her watch, 5:47 a.m. She'd slept for almost 5 hours. The driver's door opened, and Noah appeared with 2 coffee cups and a paper bag from the rest stop convenience store. "Good morning," he said, offering her one of the cups. "Black coffee, based on what I saw you drinking in the garage, and a breakfast sandwich if you want it. We're making good time, 90 minutes out." Victoria took the coffee, still processing the fact that she'd slept so long, so deeply. "You should have woken me. You needed rest more than you needed to stare at numbers you've probably memorized." Noah settled back behind the wheel, taking a sip of his own coffee. "Besides, I had good company." She noticed for the first time a small framed photograph clipped to his sun visor. A young girl, maybe 7 or 8, with dark curly hair and a gap-toothed smile, holding up a drawing of what might have been a dragon. "Your daughter?" Victoria asked. Noah's entire expression transformed. The professional driver disappeared, replaced by something raw and real and entirely unguarded. "Maddie. She's 8. That picture's from her birthday last month. She looks happy." "She is." Noah's voice carried a complicated mix of pride and pain. "She's the reason I do this work. The flexible hours let me be there for school pickups, sick days, all the things that matter. Regular jobs don't give you that." Victoria thought about her own childhood, boarding schools, nannies, parents who showed affection through achievement and approval. "You're a good father." Noah glanced back at her, something shifting in his expression. "I try to be. It's just been the 2 of us for 3 years now. I want to make sure she knows she's the most important thing in my world." The unspoken implication hung in the air. 3 years. Something had happened 3 years ago. Victoria knew about loss. She'd built her entire company in the wreckage of a father who told her she'd never amount to anything, a family that had written her off as too ambitious, too cold, too much. But she'd channeled that loss into empire building. This man had channeled his into being present for an 8-year-old girl. "The $950, Victoria said suddenly. "Is that enough?" Noah's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. "It's what we agreed on." "That's not what I asked." There was a long pause. "It's enough to cover Maddie's school fees for the semester. She's in a good program, arts integration, small class sizes, teachers who actually care. That's what matters." $950 was a rounding error in Victoria's monthly expenses. For this man, it was his daughter's education. "You could have charged more," she said quietly. "I charged what the job is worth. What I need and what I'm owed aren't always the same thing." Noah merged smoothly onto the highway, the mountains growing larger ahead. Besides, integrity isn't about maximizing profit. It's about keeping your word. Victoria stared at the back of his head, at the photograph of the smiling little girl, at the careful competence in every movement he made. She'd built her entire career on leverage, on extracting maximum value from every transaction. And here was a man who could have tripled his rate and chose not to because he'd made an agreement. "That's rare," she said. "What is?" "Integrity. Real integrity, not the performance of it." Noah met her eyes in the mirror, and for a moment something passed between them that Victoria couldn't quite name. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. "It shouldn't be rare," he said finally. "It should be baseline." They drove into the mountains as the sun rose, painting the snow-capped peaks in shades of rose and gold. Victoria sipped her coffee and thought about a man who valued his word over his wallet, who measured success in school fees and gap-toothed smiles, who drove through the night without complaint because he'd promised to get her there safely. She thought about the meeting ahead, the hostile takeover, the board members she'd have to convince, the company she'd have to fight to keep. All of it suddenly felt less important than it had yesterday. Or maybe, she realized with uncomfortable clarity, She was just seeing it differently through eyes that had actually rested. They pulled up to Cascade Mountain Resort at 6:43 a.m., exactly as Noah had promised. The sprawling complex rose against the mountains, all glass and timber and carefully cultivated luxury. "I'll be here until you're finished," Noah said, parking near the main entrance, "however long it takes. If you need anything, rides between locations, food delivery, anything at all, just text me." He handed her a simple business card with his number. Victoria took it, noticing that his hands were calloused, the hands of someone who worked with them. "The contract was for driving. You don't have to—" "I said I'd take care of you for 3 days. That's what I'll do." Noah's voice was gentle but absolute. "Go win your meeting, Miss Hale. Show them what you're made of." She found herself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in weeks. "Thank you, Noah. Just doing my job." But as Victoria walked into the resort, she knew it was more than that. This stranger had given her something she'd forgotten existed, the feeling of being supported without strings attached, helped without hidden agendas, seen without judgment. She didn't know yet that the feeling was mutual. She didn't know that in the car behind her, Noah was staring at the place where she'd disappeared into the building, wondering why a woman he'd known for less than 12 hours had somehow managed to crack through defenses he'd spent 3 years building. She didn't know that they were both about to discover that some connections couldn't be explained by logic or controlled by will. All she knew was that she had a company to save, and for the first time in months, she believed she actually could. The investor meeting was brutal. 5 hours of presentations, challenges, pointed questions designed to expose weakness. 3 board members who'd been allies now sat stone-faced, clearly already committed to Meridian's offer. The numbers were close, too close. Victoria could feel control slipping through her fingers like water. She fought anyway. Presented projections, outlined growth strategies, reminded them what they'd built together. But money spoke louder than loyalty, and Meridian was offering 30% above market value. By 2 p.m., when they finally broke for the day, Victoria's hands were shaking with suppressed fury and exhaustion. The final vote would come tomorrow. She had 12 hours to flip 2 votes or lose everything. She walked out of the conference room into the resort's marble lobby, and there was Noah, sitting in one of the leather armchairs near the windows, reading a paperback novel. He looked up immediately, as if he'd sensed her presence. One glance at her face, and he was on his feet. "Bad?" he asked simply. "Catastrophic." Victoria heard the crack in her own voice and hated it. "I need to get out of here. Can you drive me somewhere? Anywhere. Just away." "Of course." Noah was already moving toward the exit. "I know a place." 20 minutes later, they were winding through back mountain roads, the resort disappearing behind them. Noah didn't ask questions, didn't offer platitudes. He just drove with that same steady competence, letting the silence be what it needed to be. Finally, he pulled off onto a narrow gravel road that led to a scenic overlook. The view was breathtaking, mountains rolling away into the distance, a valley dotted with tiny towns, autumn colors painting the forests in copper and gold. Noah got out and opened Victoria's door. "Come on. I don't... Trust me. Just for a minute." She followed him to the edge of the overlook, where a weathered wooden railing looked out over the valley. The wind was cool and clean, carrying the scent of pine and distant wood smoke. "When things get overwhelming," Noah said quietly, "I come to places like this. Reminds me that whatever I'm dealing with is small in the grand scheme. Not unimportant, just not everything." Victoria gripped the railing, her knuckles white. "I'm going to lose my company. 12 years of work, and I'm going to lose it to corporate raiders who don't give a damn about what we've built." "Maybe." Noah leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Or maybe you'll find a way to win. Either way, you'll survive it." "You don't understand. My wife died 3 years ago." The words were quiet, matter of fact. Sudden, unexpected. One morning she was laughing at breakfast, and by dinner I was a widower with a 5-year-old daughter who kept asking when Mommy was coming home. Victoria turned to stare at him, and Noah met her eyes with devastating honesty. "I thought my world had ended," he continued. "Thought there was no way to survive it, no way to be enough for Maddie, no way to keep going. And for a while I wasn't okay, but Maddie needed me, so I got up every morning and figured it out. One day at a time, one moment at a time. I'm sorry, Victoria whispered. I'm not telling you to compare pain. Your company matters. I understand that. It's your creation, your achievement, part of your identity. Noah's voice was gentle but firm. I'm just saying that loss doesn't destroy you unless you let it. It changes you. Sometimes that change makes you stronger. Victoria felt something break open inside her chest. The careful control she'd maintained all day, all month, all year. I don't know how to lose. Nobody does. But you learn. Noah was quiet for a moment. What happens if you lose the company tomorrow? I don't know. Start over, I suppose. Build something new. Would you still be brilliant? The question caught her off guard. What? If you lose the company, would you suddenly become less intelligent, less capable, less strategic? No, of course not, but then you'd survive. Noah said it with such certainty that Victoria almost believed him. You'd be devastated, probably angry, definitely hurt. But you'd survive. And maybe you'd build something even better next time. Victoria looked out at the valley, at the endless mountains, at the world that kept turning regardless of her personal catastrophes. How did you do it? After your wife? One day at a time. And I let myself need help. Noah's smile was sad but genuine. I had neighbors who brought casseroles, parents from Maddie's school who offered playdates, friends who just sat with me when I couldn't talk. I learned that asking for help isn't weakness, it's survival. I've never been good at asking for help. Most strong people aren't. We're trained to believe independence equals strength. Noah turned to face her fully. But the strongest thing you can do is admit you can't do everything alone. Victoria felt tears stinging her eyes and blinked them back furiously. I hired you to drive, not to be my therapist. Good thing I'm doing both for the same price. Noah's voice held gentle humor. Come on, let's get you some real food. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't coffee? I had the breakfast sandwich you brought. 8 hours ago. Noah was already guiding her back to the car. There's a small restaurant in the next town. Nothing fancy, but the food's honest. 30 minutes later, they sat across from each other in a tiny diner with checkered tablecloths and locals, who eyed Victoria's designer suit with friendly curiosity. Noah ordered for both of them. Comfort food, he said, the kind that reminded you life had simple pleasures. When the food arrived, pot roast, mashed potatoes, fresh bread, Victoria realized she was actually hungry. This is good, she admitted after the first bite. Sometimes the best things are the simplest ones. Noah's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Maddie taught me that. She finds joy in everything. Puddles, cardboard boxes, the way light hits a window. Adults forget how to do that. What's she like? Your daughter. Noah's whole face lit up. Fierce, funny, terrifyingly smart. She wants to be a marine biologist because she loves octopuses, says they're misunderstood, which I think means she identifies with them. He pulled out his phone, scrolling to photos. This is her at her school science fair. She built a model of the ocean food chain out of recycled materials. The girl in the photo was beaming, standing next to an elaborate diorama, her eyes bright with pride. She's beautiful, Victoria said, and meant it. You must be very proud. Every single day. Noah's voice softened. She's the reason I keep going, the reason I choose jobs that let me be present. Money matters, but not as much as showing up matters. Victoria thought about her own father, who'd built wealth but never attended a single school event, who'd measured love in stock portfolios and disappointed silences. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. Noah met Victoria's eyes. She's teaching me how to be human again, how to feel things instead of just surviving them. They talked through the meal, about Maddie's school, about Victoria's early struggles building her company, about Noah's wife and how grief could coexist with joy. The conversation flowed naturally, effortlessly, the way it does when two people recognize something fundamental in each other. As they drove back to the resort in the deepening twilight, Victoria realized she felt lighter than she had in months. The meeting tomorrow still loomed, the votes still hung in the balance, but somehow it didn't feel quite as overwhelming. Thank you, she said as Noah pulled up to the resort entrance. For the overlook, the food, the conversation? That's what I'm here for. Noah's smile was warm. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow you show them exactly who Victoria Hale is. She wanted to say something else, something about how he'd given her more than driving services, how his presence had become unexpectedly important, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just said, "Same time tomorrow? I'll be here." Victoria walked into the resort knowing that she'd hired Noah Bennett for $950 and 3 days of driving. What she was discovering was worth infinitely more than that. And in the car behind her, Noah sat for a long moment, staring at the photograph of Maddie on his visor, wondering what it meant that talking with Victoria Hale felt like coming home to a place he'd never been. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight brought questions neither of them were quite ready to ask. Victoria woke at 5 a.m. to find a text message waiting on her phone. "Coffee's ready when you are. We leave at 7. You've got this. Noah." She stared at the message for a long moment, something warm and unfamiliar spreading through her chest. When was the last time someone had offered her encouragement without wanting something in return? When had anyone believed in her simply because they'd chosen to? By 6:30, she was dressed in her most commanding suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, armor disguised as fashion. She'd reviewed her presentation 3 more times, memorized every voting scenario, prepared responses to every possible objection. Control what you can control, her mentor had taught her years ago. The rest is just noise. Noah was waiting in the lobby, 2 coffee cups in hand and that same steady presence that had somehow become her anchor. He looked different this morning, still professional, but she noticed details she'd missed before. The way his jacket fit across his shoulders, the quiet intelligence in his eyes, the absence of a wedding ring, though she caught him occasionally touching the spot where one had clearly been. "Ready?" he asked, offering her the coffee. "As I'll ever be." Victoria took a sip, surprised to find it was exactly how she liked it. 2 shots espresso, no sugar, splash of cream. "How did you know?" "I pay attention." Noah's smile was gentle. "It's kind of my job." They walked to the car in comfortable silence, the mountain air crisp with the promise of autumn. As Noah opened her door, Victoria caught his scent, clean soap, cedar, something indefinably him that made her want to lean closer. She climbed into the back seat, disturbed by her own reaction. This was a professional arrangement. He was her driver. In 2 days, they'd part ways and never see each other again. The thought bothered her more than it should have. "The meeting's at 8:30, she said, focusing on her tablet. "Should end around noon, then there's a lunch break before the final vote at 2. "I'll be close by." Noah adjusted the rearview mirror and their eyes met briefly. "Victoria, whatever happens today, you built something extraordinary. Win or lose, that doesn't change." Her name and his voice sounded different, more intimate, like he was seeing her, not just the executive, not just the client, but the person beneath the armor. "Thank you," she whispered. The drive to the conference center took 7 minutes. Noah pulled up to the entrance, but before Victoria could reach for the door handle, he turned around to face her directly. "My wife used to say that courage isn't the absence of fear," he said quietly. "It's being terrified and doing it anyway. You're courageous, Victoria. Don't forget that." She wanted to tell him that she felt like a fraud, that she was barely holding herself together, that his presence over the past day and a half had been the only thing keeping her grounded. Instead, she just nodded and stepped out of the car. The conference room felt different today, colder, more hostile. The 3 board members who'd flipped sat together on one side, a physical representation of the battle lines. Victoria could see it in their faces. They'd already made their decision. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was a formality. Martin Reeves, her CFO and oldest ally, caught her eye and gave a subtle shake of his head. "We're losing." Victoria straightened her spine and walked to the front of the room. If she was going down, she'd do it with dignity. The morning session was worse than the previous day. Every proposal she made, Meridian's representatives had a counter. Every strength she highlighted, they found a weakness. They'd done their homework, knew exactly where to strike to make her company look vulnerable, outdated, ripe for restructuring. "Ms. Hale," said Robert Chen, one of the flipped board members, "your loyalty to the company you built is admirable, but sentiment doesn't pay dividends. Meridian is offering our shareholders a 32% premium. Can you honestly tell us your emotional attachment to being CEO is worth that much money?" The room went silent. It was a kill shot, and everyone knew it. Victoria met his eyes steadily. My emotional attachment, as you call it, is exactly why this company is worth what it is. I built Hale Logistics from nothing. One truck, one driver, one promise to deliver excellence. Every employee, every client relationship, every innovation came from someone who gave a damn about more than quarterly profits. That's a lovely speech, interrupted Patricia Morrison from Meridian. But speeches don't increase shareholder value. Our restructuring plan does. Your restructuring plan involves laying off 400 people in the first quarter, Victoria shot back. People with families, mortgages, children who depend on their health care. That's not restructuring. That's strip mining. It's business. Patricia's smile was cold. Perhaps you're too emotionally involved to see that. Martin tried to defend her, presenting counter-proposals and alternative strategies, but Victoria could feel the room slipping away. By 11:30, when they broke for a recess, she knew it was over. She found Noah in the parking lot, leaning against the Camry, reading his paperback. He looked up as she approached, and whatever he saw in her face made him close the book immediately. That bad? It's done. They're going to vote me out. Victoria's voice sounded flat even to her own ears. I just have to get through the formality of losing. Noah was quiet for a moment. What do you need? Not what do you want or what can I do? What do you need? As if her needs mattered more than his convenience. I need... Victoria's voice cracked. I need to not be here. Can we drive? Just drive somewhere until it's time to come back? Get in. They drove into the mountains, away from the resort, away from the conference center, away from everything. Noah didn't try to fill the silence with empty comfort. He just drove, letting her sit with her grief. Finally, after 30 minutes, he pulled off at a trailhead. Walk with me? I'm in heels and a suit. I know, we won't go far. Noah was already out of the car, opening her door. Come on, trust me. Victoria followed him onto a dirt path that wound between towering pines. The forest was quiet except for birdsong and the whisper of wind through branches. Her heels were completely impractical, but somehow that made it better. The absurdity of hiking in Louboutins while her company collapsed. After 10 minutes, they emerged into a small clearing where a stream tumbled over moss-covered rocks. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, painting everything in shades of green and gold. I used to bring Maddie here, Noah said, settling onto a fallen log. When she was having a hard time after her mom died. Couldn't fix the pain, but being somewhere beautiful helped her remember that the world was still worth being in. Victoria sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Does it get easier, the grief? It gets different, less sharp, more like an old ache. Noah picked up a smooth stone from the stream bank, turning it over in his hands. Some days I still expect to see Sarah at the breakfast table or hear her laugh. Then I remember, and it hits all over again. Sarah, that was her name? Yeah. Noah's smile was bittersweet. She was a teacher, second grade, loved her students almost as much as she loved Maddie. She had this way of seeing potential in everyone, even people who'd given up on themselves. She sounds remarkable. She was. Noah skipped the stone across the stream, 3 perfect skips before it sank. But she'd hate that I turned her into a saint. She was human. We fought about stupid things, like everyone does. She left dishes in the sink and forgot to put gas in the car, but she loved fiercely, and she made me want to be better. Victoria watched the water flowing over the rocks, constant and unchanging. I've never had that. Someone who made me want to be better. Never? My parents measured love in achievements. My father especially. Nothing was ever good enough. Building Hale Logistics was supposed to prove him wrong, show him I was worth something. She laughed bitterly. He died 2 years before the company turned its first profit. Never knew I'd succeeded. That must hurt. It did. It does. Victoria pulled off her heels, letting her feet touch the cool earth. I thought success would fill the hole he left. It didn't. Just gave me a bigger platform to feel empty on. Noah turned to look at her, really look at her, and Victoria felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with clothing. You're not empty, Victoria. You're exhausted. There's a difference. How do you know? Because empty people don't fight like you fought in that meeting. Empty people don't care about 400 employees losing their health care. You're not empty. You're just depleted. That's fixable. Something in Victoria's chest cracked open. Before she could think better of it, she was crying. Not the delicate tears of someone who cried prettily, but huge gasping sobs that shook her whole body. Noah didn't tell her to stop, didn't offer platitudes or try to fix it. He just wrapped an arm around her shoulders and let her fall apart, solid and steady and utterly present. "I'm sorry," she gasped out between sobs. "This is so unprofessional." "Screw professional." Noah's voice was gentle but firm. "You're human. You're allowed to feel things." I can't afford to." "I know, but you can here, with me. I'm not going to judge you or use it against you or think you're weak." He tightened his arm around her. "You're the strongest person I've met in a long time. That doesn't mean you have to carry everything alone." Victoria cried until there were no tears left, until the grief and exhaustion and loneliness poured out of her like poison from a wound. And through it all, Noah just held her. When she finally pulled back, embarrassed and red-eyed, he handed her a clean handkerchief from his pocket. "Who carries handkerchiefs anymore?" she asked, trying for lightness. "Single dads with daughters who collect rocks and cry during animated movies." Noah's smile was warm. "You learn to be prepared." Victoria wiped her eyes, aware she must look terrible. "I've ruined your shirt." "Shirts wash." "You feeling any better?" Surprisingly, she was. The crushing weight on her chest had eased. "A little?" "Good." Noah stood, offering her his hand. "We should head back. You've got a vote to attend." "I'm going to lose." "Probably, but you're going to face it with your head high." He pulled her to her feet, and for a moment they stood very close, his hand still holding hers. That matters more than winning. They drove back to the resort in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Companionable, intimate, full of things unsaid but understood. As Noah pulled up to the conference center, Victoria found herself reluctant to leave the car. In here, she was safe. Out there, she had to face defeat. "Victoria?" Noah's voice was soft. "Whatever happens, you're going to be okay. I promise." "How can you promise that?" "Because I've seen you, not the executive or the CEO, you, and you is someone who survives." He met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Now go show them exactly who they're losing." The final vote took less than 15 minutes, 6-4 in favor of accepting Meridian's offer. Patricia Morrison smiled like a shark as the gavel came down. "Effective immediately, Victoria Hale will transition out of her role as CEO. We thank her for her service and wish her the best in future endeavors." Polite applause. Carefully neutral faces. The death of 12 years of work, wrapped in corporate courtesy. Martin found her afterward, his face drawn with regret. "Victoria, I'm so sorry. I tried everything." "I know you did." She squeezed his shoulder. "It's not your fault." "What will you do?" "I have no idea." And surprisingly, that felt like freedom rather than failure. She walked out of the conference center for the last time, shoulders back, head high, exactly as Noah had told her to. The Camry was waiting, and so was he. Noah took one look at her face and said, "You want to talk about it or drive away from it?" "Drive. Far. Fast." "Done." They drove for 2 hours, deep into the mountains where resort towns gave way to wilderness. Victoria watched the landscape blur past, feeling oddly detached from everything. She'd lost. It was over. And somehow, sitting in this car with this man, she felt more at peace than she had in months. Finally, as the sun began to set, Noah pulled into a tiny town, maybe 300 people, one main street, the kind of place that time had gently forgotten. He parked in front of a small restaurant with a neon sign that read Maggie's Place. "Come on," he said. "Comfort food, round 2. The restaurant was nearly empty, just a handful of locals and a waitress who called everyone honey. Noah ordered for both of them again, this time chicken pot pie and homemade bread. "You're surprisingly good at knowing what I need," Victoria said as the food arrived. "My superpower." Noah's eyes crinkled with humor. "That and parallel parking." Despite everything, Victoria laughed. "I lost my company today, and you're making me laugh about parallel parking." Laughter's healing. Sarah taught me that. He took a bite of pot pie, then added quietly, "After she died, Maddie stopped laughing for almost 6 months. It was the scariest thing I'd ever experienced. Then one day, she found a video of a cat falling off a counter, and she just cracked up, like someone had turned a light back on inside her. And you realized she'd be okay. I realized we'd both be okay. Eventually." Noah met her eyes across the table. "You're going to be okay too, Victoria. This feels like the end, but it's really just a very painful middle." Middle of what? Whatever comes next. You're brilliant, driven, passionate about what you do. Someone's going to scoop you up in a heartbeat, or you'll build something new. Either way, this isn't your ending. Victoria wanted to believe him. What if I don't want to build something new? What if I'm tired of fighting? Then don't fight. Rest. Figure out who Victoria Hale is when she's not being CEO. Noah's voice was gentle. You've been running so hard for so long. Maybe the universe is telling you to stop and breathe. I don't know how to stop. I'll teach you. Maddie's an excellent instructor in the art of doing nothing productively. The offer hung between them, more significant than it should have been. This was supposed to be a 3-day job. Tomorrow morning, their contract ended. Noah would drive her back to Seattle, collect his $950, and disappear back into his life. The thought made Victoria's chest ache. "Tell me about her," she said instead. "About Maddie. What's she like when she's not posing with science fair projects?" Noah's whole face transformed. "She's chaos in human form. Last week she tried to make a volcano in the bathtub using baking soda and food coloring. The bathroom looked like a crime scene." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos. "She convinced 3 neighborhood kids to help her build a research station in our backyard. It's mostly cardboard boxes and Christmas lights, but she treats it like NASA headquarters." Victoria looked at the photos. A makeshift fort decorated with hand-drawn constellation maps. A little girl with Noah's eyes and wild creativity written all over her face. She's remarkable. She is. Exhausting, but remarkable. Noah's thumb brushed over one photo with unconscious tenderness. "Every day I'm terrified I'm screwing it up, that she needs things I can't give her, that I'm not enough to replace what she lost." "You're more than enough." Victoria said it with certainty. She has a father who shows up, who pays attention, who makes her feel like the center of the universe. Most kids never get that. "Did you?" "No?" Victoria's voice went quiet. "I got boarding schools and disappointed silences and lectures about potential I was wasting. Love was something you earned through achievement, and the bar kept moving higher." Noah reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "That's not love. That's manipulation." The warmth of his touch sent electricity up Victoria's arm. She should pull away. This was crossing lines, blurring boundaries that should stay clear, but she didn't want to. His hand felt like an anchor in a storm. "I don't know what love actually looks like," she admitted. "I've had relationships, but they were always transactional. We both got something we needed. When the transaction stopped working, we moved on." "That's not love either. That's just convenient companionship." Noah's thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand, probably unconsciously. "Love is choosing someone even when it's inconvenient, showing up even when it's hard, believing in them even when they can't believe in themselves. Like you do for Maddie, like I try to do for Maddie." He smiled. "And like you did for those 400 employees. You could have taken Meridian's deal, walked away with a fortune, but you fought because you cared about people who'd never know you were protecting them." Victoria stared at their joined hands, at the calluses on his fingers, at the simple honesty of the gesture. "I've known you for 2 days. I know. This doesn't make sense. I know. We're from completely different worlds. I know that too." Noah squeezed her hand gently. "But that doesn't change the fact that you're the first person in 3 years who's made me want to, I don't know. Try again. Feel something other than functional." Victoria's heart was pounding. "I'm a mess right now. I just lost everything. I'm probably going to be a disaster for months." "So?" Noah's smile was gentle. "I'm a single dad with an 8-year-old dictator and a beat-up Camry. Not exactly a prize myself." "You're wrong about that." The words came out before Victoria could censor them. You're You're the best person I've met in years, maybe ever. The air between them changed, thickened with possibility. Noah's eyes dropped to her lips, then back up to her eyes, asking a question. Victoria answered by leaning forward. The kiss was soft, tentative, nothing like the calculated passion of her past relationships. It tasted like questions and possibilities, like comfort and risk all tangled together. Noah's hand came up to cup her cheek, gentle and reverent, like she was something precious. When they pulled apart, Victoria was shaking. "We shouldn't," she whispered. "Probably not," Noah agreed. "This is a terrible idea." "Absolutely. I'm your client. Contract ends tomorrow morning." His voice was rough with emotion. "But Victoria, I need you to know, I'm not looking for a transaction. I'm not interested in something temporary or convenient. If we do this, if we try this, I'm all in. That's just how I'm built." Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd driven through the night to keep a promise, who'd held her while she cried, who measured wealth in school fees and gap-toothed smiles, a man who'd survived devastating loss and chose to love anyway, fiercely and completely. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I don't know how to be someone's anything. I'll probably screw it up. Then we'll figure it out together." Noah's smile was warm and real and utterly without agenda. No pressure, no expectations, just, let's see where this goes, honest and slow and real. "Real," Victoria repeated. The word felt foreign. Her whole life had been performance, performing success, performing confidence, performing control. Real meant vulnerable. Real meant risk. Real meant this man with kind eyes and steady hands might actually see her, all of her, and choose to stay anyway. "Okay," she said. "Let's try real." Noah's answering smile could have lit the whole restaurant. "Yeah? Yeah?" Victoria felt herself smiling back, something loosening in her chest. "But I should warn you, I'm probably going to be terrible at it." "Good thing I'm patient." Noah signaled for the check. "Come on, let's get you back to the resort. You've had an impossibly long day." They drove back through the mountains in comfortable silence, hands linked across the center console. Victoria watched the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky and thought about trajectories, how her whole life had been pointing in one direction, and in 48 hours, everything had shifted. At the resort entrance, Noah walked her to the lobby doors. "Tomorrow's our last contracted day," he said quietly. "I'm supposed to drive you back to Seattle in the morning." "I know. But after that," Noah took both her hands. "After that, if you want, I'd like to see you again. Take you to dinner, introduce you to Maddie when the time's right, figure out what this is." Victoria felt tears pricking her eyes again, but this time they weren't from grief. "I'd like that, a lot." "Good." Noah kissed her forehead, chaste and sweet. "Get some sleep, Victoria. Tomorrow's a new chapter." She watched him walk back to the Camry, then turned toward the resort. She'd lost her company today, lost 12 years of work, her identity, her carefully constructed empire. But standing here with the taste of Noah's kiss still on her lips, Victoria realized she might have found something infinitely more valuable. The question was whether she was brave enough to keep it. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She lay in the resort's luxury bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through everything that had happened in the past 48 hours. She'd lost her company. She'd cried on a stranger's shoulder. She'd kissed a man she barely knew and felt more alive in that moment than she had in years. The phone on her nightstand buzzed at 6 a.m. A text from Noah. "Morning, coffee's waiting. No rush, checkout's at 11. Take your time." She smiled despite her exhaustion. He was giving her space, not pushing, just being steadily present in a way that felt both foreign and essential. By 7, she was packed and in the lobby. Noah was there, of course, 2 coffees and what looked like fresh pastries from the resort bakery. "You didn't have to," she said, accepting the coffee. "I wanted to." Noah's eyes searched her face. "How are you feeling?" "Honestly, I have no idea." Victoria took a sip of coffee, buying time to organize her thoughts. "Everything feels surreal. Yesterday morning I was a CEO. Now I'm just unemployed." "You're not just anything. You're figuring out what's next." Noah picked up her luggage with easy strength. Come on, long drive ahead. The journey back to Seattle should have felt like a retreat, a return to reality after the strange intensity of the past few days. Instead, it felt like leaving something important behind. They drove in silence for the first hour, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Victoria couldn't stand it anymore. What happens when we get back? She asked. Noah glanced at her in the rearview mirror. What do you want to happen? I don't know. This is uncharted territory for me. Victoria twisted her hands together. I don't know how to date. I don't know how to be in someone's life without it being transactional. I don't know how to meet someone's child or... Hey, Noah's voice was gentle. Slow down. We don't have to figure out everything today. How about we start with dinner? Just you and me, no job, no contract, just two people getting to know each other. When? Friday night, if you're free. There's a small Italian place near my apartment. Nothing fancy, but the food's incredible. Victoria felt something flutter in her chest. Okay. Friday. They lapsed back into silence, but Noah reached back and offered his hand. Victoria took it, lacing her fingers through his, and watched the mountains give way to foothills, then to the sprawling suburbs that ringed Seattle. Can I ask you something? Noah said after another 30 minutes. Of course. What are you afraid of? With this? With us? Victoria considered the question seriously. That I'll disappoint you, that you'll see who I really am, someone who prioritizes work over everything, who doesn't know how to be soft or vulnerable or maternal, and realize you made a mistake. Victoria, I've seen you cry in a forest clearing. I've watched you fight for employees who'll never know your name. I've heard you talk about your father with more honesty than most people show their therapists. Noah's voice was firm but kind. I already know who you are, and I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. I say that because I mean it. He squeezed her hand. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are, and let me care about that person. Victoria felt tears stinging her eyes for what felt like the 100th time in 2 days. I'm a mess right now. So? I was a mess for 2 years after Sarah died. Maddie's a mess at least 3 times a week. People are messy. That's what makes them real. They pulled into Seattle just after 2 in the afternoon, the city gray and drizzling in typical Pacific Northwest fashion. Noah navigated to Victoria's building, a modern high-rise downtown with a doorman and marble lobby. This is me, Victoria said as Noah pulled up to the entrance. He got out and retrieved her luggage, setting it carefully on the sidewalk. They stood facing each other, awkward and uncertain, the 3-day intimacy of the car suddenly gone. Thank you, Victoria said, for everything, for driving, for listening, for... Noah kissed her. Not tentatively like at the restaurant, but with certainty and warmth and promise. When he pulled back, his eyes were serious. Friday at 7. I'll text you the address. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. And Victoria, this weekend, don't think about the company or what comes next. Just rest. You've earned it. She watched him drive away, the silver Camry disappearing into traffic, and felt the loss of his presence like a physical ache. The doorman greeted her professionally. Welcome back, Ms. Hale. Any mail? I'm not sure. I've been away. The normalcy of the exchange felt bizarre. 3 days ago, she'd left this building as CEO of a major company. Now she was returning as nothing in particular. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it, immaculate, expensive, utterly devoid of personality. Black leather furniture, abstract art she'd bought because her decorator said it was important, a kitchen she rarely used. Looking at it now through Noah's eyes, through the lens of his small home filled with Maddie's drawings and science projects and chaos, Victoria felt a wave of profound loneliness. This wasn't a home. It was a showcase, a place to sleep between work marathons. She dropped her luggage in the bedroom and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Somewhere out there, Noah was driving home to his daughter. He'd probably scoop her up in a hug, ask about her day, make dinner together in a kitchen that smelled like life instead of expensive cleaning products. Victoria's phone rang. Martin's name flashed on the screen. Hey, she said, answering. Victoria, how are you holding up? I'm fine. Home now. She didn't mention Noah, didn't mention that the past 3 days had shifted something fundamental inside her. I wanted to let you know Meridian's already started restructuring. They're bringing in their own people, and the layoffs start Monday. Martin sounded tired. I'm sorry. I tried to negotiate protections, but it's not your fault. Victoria watched rain streak down the windows. Those 400 people. Do they know yet? Not officially, but word's spreading. Victoria felt anger flare hot in her chest. They spent 12 years building that company. They have mortgages, families, kids who need health care, and Meridian's just going to, there's nothing we can do, the vote's final. But even as Martin said it, Victoria's mind was already working. She'd lost the company, yes, but she still had relationships, contacts, leverage in other corners of the industry. Martin, I need you to do me a favor. Anything. Get me a list of everyone who's getting laid off. Names, positions, contact information. There was a pause. Victoria, what are you planning? I'm not sure yet, but those people deserve better. Maybe I can help them land somewhere safe. You just lost your own job. You don't have to. I want to. Victoria surprised herself with how much she meant it. Send me the list. After she hung up, Victoria stood at the window for a long time, watching the city lights begin to flicker on in the gathering dusk. She thought about Noah's words, that this wasn't an ending, just a painful middle, that she was allowed to rest. But rest had never been her strength. Action was. Her phone buzzed with a text. Noah. Made it home. Maddie wants to know if you're real or if I made you up. Apparently I don't usually come home smiling like this. Victoria found herself laughing. Tell her I'm real and that she has excellent taste in science fair projects. She says, thank you, and wants to know your favorite ocean animal. This is apparently very important. Octopuses. For the same reason Maddie likes them. They're misunderstood. There was a longer pause before the next message. She says you can come to dinner sometime if you want. Fair warning, she's a tough crowd. You'll be interrogated. Victoria's heart clenched. I'd like that. When she's ready. How about we start with Friday, just us? Then we'll work up to the Inquisition. Deal. She set her phone down and looked around her empty apartment. For the first time in years, Victoria Hale had nowhere she needed to be. Nothing she had to control, no performance to maintain. It was terrifying. It was also, she realized, an opportunity. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended state. Victoria slept late, something she hadn't done in over a decade. She ordered takeout and ate it in pajamas. She ignored calls from reporters wanting comments on the Meridian acquisition. She let herself exist without purpose or productivity, and it felt like learning a foreign language. But she also worked quietly on the list Martin had sent. 417 names, each representing a life that was about to be upended. Victoria spent hours researching, making calls to old contacts, pulling favors from people who owed her. She couldn't save all of them, but she could try to soften the landing. Thursday afternoon, her doorbell rang. Victoria opened it to find a delivery person holding an enormous bouquet of wildflowers. Nothing fancy or expensive, just a riot of color and life. The card read, "For courage. See you tomorrow. Noah." Victoria pressed her face into the flowers, breathing in their scent, and felt something inside her chest expand with warmth. Friday evening arrived with a speed that was both thrilling and terrifying. Victoria changed outfits 4 times before settling on dark jeans and a soft sweater, casual but put together, approachable but still herself. She applied makeup with shaking hands, aware that this felt more significant than any board meeting or investor pitch. This mattered in a way that transcended business. Noah had texted the address, a small restaurant in a neighborhood Victoria had never visited, the kind of area where families lived and kids played on sidewalks. She arrived exactly on time to find him waiting outside, and the sight of him made her pulse quicken. He'd dressed up, button-down shirt, dark jeans, his hair still slightly damp from a recent shower. When he saw her, his whole face lit up. "Hi," he said, and the single word held so much warmth it made her dizzy. "Hi yourself." Noah stepped closer, and Victoria realized he was nervous too. His hands flexed at his sides, as if he wanted to touch her but wasn't sure he should. She solved the problem by taking his hand. "I missed you." "Yeah?" His smile was pleased and surprised. "I missed you too. Maddie said I was moping." How much have you told her? That I met someone interesting, that I like you. Noah squeezed her hand. She's cautiously optimistic, also intensely curious. I had to promise full disclosure after tonight. No pressure then. None at all. Noah's eyes crinkled with humor. Come on, let's get you fed. The restaurant was exactly as he'd described, small, family-run, the kind of place where everyone seemed to know each other. The owner greeted Noah by name and gave Victoria an appraising look that was more protective than judgmental. So, this is the famous lady, the older woman said in an Italian accent thick as marinara. Noah, he talks about you, says you're special. Victoria felt herself blushing. He talks about me? Won't shut up about you, the owner said cheerfully. Come, come. Best table, I save it for you. They were seated in a corner booth with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. The menu was handwritten and everything looked incredible. The lasagna's life-changing, Noah said, but honestly, you can't go wrong with anything Maria makes. They ordered, and then they were alone again, looking at each other across the table with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. I don't know how to do this, Victoria admitted. Small talk feels stupid, but diving straight into deep conversation seems too intense. Then let's do something in between. Noah leaned forward. Tell me something true. Something you don't usually share. Victoria considered. I'm afraid I don't know how to be happy. Success, achievement, control, those I understand. But actual contentment? I wouldn't recognize it if it walked up and introduced itself. Noah was quiet for a moment. That's heartbreaking. It's just reality. No, it's what you've been taught. Doesn't make it true. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Happiness isn't some mystical state you achieve. It's small moments strung together, Maddie laughing at a stupid joke, the first sip of really good coffee, finishing a book you loved. It's not dramatic or Instagram-worthy, it's just life. Tell me something true about you, Victoria said. Noah's expression grew serious. I'm terrified of dating again. After Sarah died, I convinced myself I was done with romance, that Maddie was enough, that I didn't need or want anyone else. And then you got in my car, and everything shifted. He traced patterns on the back of her hand. You scare me, Victoria, because you make me want things I thought I'd given up on. Like what? Partnership. Someone to share the boring parts of life with, not just the highlights. Someone Maddie could look up to, learn from. His voice dropped lower. Someone I could love. Victoria's breath caught. We've known each other less than a week. I know. Logically, it's insane. Noah's eyes held hers. But I've learned that logic doesn't always apply to the important things. When Sarah and I met, I knew within a week that I wanted to marry her. Everyone said we were rushing, but we had 7 beautiful years together. I don't regret a single rushed decision. I'm not Sarah. I don't want you to be. I want you to be you, complicated, driven, brilliant, stubborn, you. Noah smiled. With all your sharp edges and defense mechanisms and inability to recognize happiness, I want the real version, not some edited copy. The food arrived before Victoria could respond, which was good because she wasn't sure she could speak around the lump in her throat. They ate and talked about lighter things. Maddie's latest obsession with marine biology, Victoria's secret love of terrible reality TV, Noah's disastrous attempts at home renovation. I tried to build Maddie a bookshelf, he admitted. It collapsed within an hour. She still has books stacked in the corner because I'm too ashamed to try again. I could hire someone to build it, Victoria offered, then immediately regretted it. That was her old reflex, throw money at problems. But Noah just laughed. Or we could build it together, badly, and let Maddie paint it whatever ridiculous color she chooses. The imperfection's part of the charm. I don't do imperfection well. I've noticed. Noah's voice was gentle. But maybe that's something we can work on. Together. After dinner, they walked through the neighborhood in the cool evening air. Noah took her hand naturally, as if they'd been doing this for years instead of days. I have to tell you something, Victoria said as they paused at a small park where kids were playing on swings. I've been working on something this week. The employees' meridian's laying off. I've been making calls, trying to place them in other companies. So far, I've got positions lined up for about 60 of them. Noah stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Victoria, that's incredible. It's not enough. There are 417 people total. But you're trying. After losing your own job, your first instinct is to help others. He cupped her face in his hands. Do you have any idea how extraordinary that is? It's just the right thing to do. Exactly. And that's who you are. Noah kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips, soft and sweet and full of promise. You're not cold or heartless or any of the things you've convinced yourself you are. You're fierce and protective, and you care so damn much it probably hurts. Victoria leaned into him, letting herself be held. What if I mess this up? What if I'm too damaged or broken? Or then we'll figure it out. That's what people do. They work through things together. Noah pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I'm not asking for perfection, Victoria. I'm asking for honesty, for effort, for you to show up, even when it's hard. I can do that. She meant it. I want to do that. They walked back to where Victoria had parked her car, a sleek BMW that looked comically out of place in this neighborhood of practical sedans and minivans. When can I see you again? Noah asked. Tomorrow? Or is that too soon? Tomorrow's perfect. Actually, he hesitated. Maddie has a soccer game at 2. Would you want to come? No pressure to meet her formally. You could just watch from a distance, get a feel for that part of my life. Victoria's first instinct was to say no, that it was too fast, too much. But she thought about Noah's words, that happiness was small moments strung together. A Saturday afternoon watching a little girl play soccer sounded like exactly that kind of moment. I'd love to, she said. Noah's smile was brilliant. Yeah? Yeah. Text me the location. He kissed her again, longer this time, with enough heat that Victoria felt it down to her toes. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. I should go, Victoria whispered, even though she didn't want to. Probably. Noah didn't move. But for the record, I really don't want you to. Me neither. They stood there for another moment, neither willing to be the first to pull away. Finally, Noah stepped back with obvious reluctance. Tomorrow at 2. Don't be late. Maddie takes soccer very seriously. Victoria laughed. I'll be there. She drove home in a daze, her lips still tingling from Noah's kisses, her heart full of something that felt dangerously close to hope. When she got back to her apartment, she didn't see the sterile showcase anymore. She saw potential, for warmth, for life, for the kind of home Noah had built with his daughter. Her phone buzzed with a text from Noah. Made it home. Maddie interrogated me for 20 minutes about you. I showed her the octopus text, and she's officially impressed. High praise. Tell her I'm looking forward to watching her dominate the soccer field tomorrow. She says no pressure, but she's the striker and expects to score at least 3 goals. Again, no pressure. Victoria found herself grinning. I'll bring my impressed face. Perfect. Also, Victoria, tonight was the best first date I've had in years. Possibly ever. Me too. And I've had a lot of terrible first dates, so that's saying something. We're definitely doing this again. Absolutely. Victoria got ready for bed, still smiling, her phone clutched in her hand. She'd lost her company, her identity, everything she'd built her sense of self around. But lying here in the dark, thinking about a man with kind eyes and a gap-toothed daughter, Victoria realized she might have found something worth more than any corporate empire. The question was whether she had the courage to hold on to it. Tomorrow would be another test. Meeting Maddie, even from a distance, meant stepping into Noah's real life. Not the bubble of a 3-day drive or a romantic dinner, but the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of single parenthood. Victoria fell asleep trying to remember the last time she'd felt this nervous about anything. Board meetings, investor pitches, hostile takeovers. None of those had made her pulse race like the thought of watching an 8-year-old play soccer. She'd built a $200 million company from nothing. Surely she could handle one little girl with a gap-toothed smile and an octopus obsession. Surely. Victoria woke Saturday morning with butterflies in her stomach that had nothing to do with business negotiations. She stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes, trying to figure out what one wore to watch a child's soccer game. Too formal would seem out of touch. Too casual might look like she wasn't taking it seriously. Finally, She settled on dark jeans, a simple sweater, and flat boots. Practical, approachable, herself. The soccer field was in a suburban park she'd never visited, surrounded by families in camping chairs and kids running wild between games. Victoria parked her BMW and immediately felt conspicuous. Every other vehicle was a minivan or SUV covered in soccer decals and bumper stickers proclaiming proud parent status. She spotted Noah immediately. He was standing on the sideline with a group of other parents, wearing jeans and a jacket, his hands shoved in his pockets. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders. He was nervous too. Victoria approached slowly, giving him time to notice her. When he did, his whole face transformed with relief and joy. "You came," he said, closing the distance between them. "I said I would." Victoria glanced around at the clusters of families. "Where should I—" "With me." Noah took her hand without hesitation, lacing their fingers together. "I want you here. With me." Several parents turned to look at them with open curiosity. Noah ignored them, focusing entirely on Victoria. "She's number 7, he said, pointing to the field where small figures in bright jerseys were warming up, the one doing cartwheels instead of stretching. Victoria followed his gaze and found her. Maddie Bennett, gap-toothed and wild-haired, turning cartwheels with absolute commitment to chaos. Even from a distance, Victoria could see Noah in her features, in the way she moved with unself-conscious confidence. "She's beautiful," Victoria said softly. "She's a menace." But Noah's voice was full of pride. "Fair warning, she's probably going to notice you and have questions. Lots of questions." "I can handle questions." "Can you handle an 8-year-old who asked her science teacher if octopuses have existential crises?" Noah's smile was wry. "Because that's the level of interrogation you're facing." Before Victoria could respond, a whistle blew and the kids scrambled into position. Maddie took her place as striker, bouncing on her toes with barely contained energy. The game started, and Victoria found herself completely absorbed. She'd never watched youth soccer before, had no real understanding of the rules, but there was something captivating about the pure joy on the kids' faces as they chased the ball in an enthusiastic mob. Maddie was good, really good. She moved with the same efficiency Noah showed in everything, no wasted motion, always calculating angles and opportunities. Within 10 minutes, she'd scored her first goal. A perfect kick that sailed past the goalie with precision that seemed impossible for someone so small. Noah cheered so loudly that several parents turned to stare, but he didn't care. His pride was absolute and unselfconscious. "That's my girl," he shouted, and Maddie turned to wave at him, her smile brilliant. Then her eyes found Victoria standing next to her father, hand in hand with him, and the smile faltered into confusion. "She saw me," Victoria said, suddenly panicked. "Should I—" "Stay right here." Noah squeezed her hand. "It's fine. She was going to meet you eventually." The game continued, but Victoria could feel Maddie's attention shifting between playing and sneaking glances at the stranger holding her father's hand. By halftime, when the kids ran to the sideline for water and orange slices, Maddie made a beeline straight for them. Up close, she was even more striking. Dark curls escaped from her ponytail, her face was flushed with exertion, and her eyes, Noah's eyes, studied Victoria with unnerving intensity. "You're the octopus lady," Maddie said without preamble. Victoria blinked. Yes?" "Dad said you like octopuses because they're misunderstood. I like them because they have 3 hearts and blue blood and can squeeze through anything." Maddie took a long drink from her water bottle, still staring. "Also, they're really smart. Some scientists think they might be aliens." "I didn't know that," Victoria said honestly. "The alien part, I mean." "Most people don't. Most people think they're just weird squids." Maddie wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "Are you Dad's girlfriend?" Noah choked on air. "Maddie, we talked about this." "You said you liked her a lot. You said she was special. That's girlfriend stuff." Maddie's logic was irrefutable. She turned back to Victoria. "So are you?" Victoria looked at Noah, who was turning red, then back at this fierce little person who deserved honesty. "I'd like to be, if that's okay with you." Maddie considered this seriously. "Do you make him happy?" The question was so direct, so vulnerable beneath its bluntness, that Victoria felt her throat tighten.
I'm going to try my best to. That's what Mom used to say, that she'd try her best. Maddie's voice went quiet. But then she died, and trying wasn't enough. Noah crouched down immediately, pulling his daughter close. Maddie, that's not... It's okay, Dad. I know it wasn't her fault. Maddie hugged him back, then pulled away and fixed Victoria with another intense stare. I'm just saying, trying's good, but staying's better. Are you going to stay? Victoria felt like she'd been punched in the chest. This 8-year-old had just articulated her deepest fear, that she couldn't commit, couldn't stay, couldn't be what people needed long term.
I'm going to try my absolute best to stay, Victoria said carefully. I can't promise I'll never mess up, because I probably will, but I promise I won't leave without a really good reason. Is that fair? Maddie studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but you should know that Dad cries during animated movies and burns everything he tries to cook except grilled cheese. Also, he sings in the shower, and he's really bad at it. Maddie! Noah's face was scarlet. She should know the truth, Maddie said with the devastating honesty of children. Oh, and he talks about you all the time. Like, all the time. It's kind of annoying. Victoria couldn't help laughing. What does he say? That you're smart and brave and that you make him feel alive again. Maddie said it matter-of-factly, as if she hadn't just revealed something intensely private. Also that you have really pretty eyes. He said that part when he thought I wasn't listening. Okay, that's enough intelligence gathering for today, Noah said, steering Maddie back toward the field. Game's about to start again. Go score some more goals. I'm going to score 5 total, Maddie announced. Watch me. She ran back onto the field, leaving Noah and Victoria standing in stunned silence. I'm so sorry, Noah said finally. She has absolutely no filter. Don't apologize. She's remarkable. Victoria watched Maddie high-five her teammates. Terrifying, but remarkable. That's pretty much parenthood in a nutshell. Noah pulled Victoria closer, wrapping an arm around her waist. For what it's worth, I do think you have really pretty eyes, and I have been talking about you constantly. Maddie started charging me $1 every time I mention you. How much do you owe her? $47 and counting. Victoria laughed and leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Around them, other families watched with varying degrees of curiosity and approval, but she found she didn't care. This felt right in a way nothing had in years. Maddie scored 4 more goals, exactly as promised, and her team won 7-3. After the game, she bounded over to them, sweaty and triumphant. Did you see? She demanded. Did you count? 5 goals, Victoria confirmed. Very impressive. Thanks. I've been practicing. Maddie looked between them. Are you coming to dinner? Dad always takes me for pizza after games. Victoria glanced at Noah, who looked both hopeful and anxious. This was moving fast. First date last night, meeting his daughter today, family dinner tonight. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was too much, too soon. But the part of her that had kissed Noah in the rain, that had cried in his arms, that had felt more herself with him than with anyone else in years, that part said yes without hesitation. I'd love to, she said. Maddie's answering grin was pure sunshine. Good. You can sit next to me and tell me about your job. Dad said you ran a whole company. That's pretty cool. I used to run a company, Victoria corrected gently. I don't anymore. Why not? Because sometimes things don't work out the way you plan, even when you try really hard. Maddie considered this. Like when I tried to build a volcano in the bathtub and it exploded everywhere? Exactly like that. Dad was really mad about the volcano, but then I cleaned it up and he said he was proud of me for taking responsibility. Maddie grabbed Victoria's hand with the same casual confidence she'd grabbed Noah's. Are you taking responsibility? The question was so perceptive it took Victoria's breath away. I'm trying to. I'm helping the people who worked for me find new jobs. That's good. That's what heroes do in books. They help people even when it's hard. Maddie swung their joined hands. Come on, I want pepperoni pizza and I'm starving. The pizza place was exactly what Victoria expected. Loud, chaotic, filled with families and the smell of garlic and cheese. They squeezed into a booth, Maddie insisting on sitting between Noah and Victoria, and ordered a large pepperoni pizza with extra cheese. While they waited for food, Maddie peppered Victoria with questions. What was her favorite color? Did she like dogs? Had she ever been scuba diving? Could she help with Maddie's science fair project about ocean acidification? Victoria answered each question honestly, finding herself charmed by this small person's boundless curiosity and complete lack of social filter. Why don't you have kids? Maddie asked suddenly. Noah nearly choked on his water. Maddie, that's personal. It's okay. Victoria met Maddie's curious gaze. I never found the right person to have kids with, and I was always so focused on work that I didn't think about it much. Do you want kids? Victoria paused. A week ago, she would have said no without hesitation. Children didn't fit into her carefully controlled life, her 90-hour work weeks, her single-minded focus on success. But sitting here with Maddie's hand in hers, watching Noah's eyes crinkle with pride every time his daughter said something clever, Victoria found her answer shifting. I think I'd like the opportunity to find out, she said carefully. Maddie seemed satisfied with this. Good, because Dad needs help. He tries really hard, but he's not good at hair braiding and he always packs boring lunches. I heard that, Noah protested. My lunches are not boring. Dad, you pack the same sandwich every single day, turkey and cheese on wheat bread. No variety. It's scientifically boring. Victoria laughed so hard she nearly cried. What would make lunches more interesting? Sushi, or those little cheese squares with the crackers? Or literally anything that's not the same sandwich? Maddie was warming to her topic. And sometimes I want my hair in a French braid, but Dad can only do regular braids and ponytails. Mom used to do fancy braids. The casual mention of Sarah made Noah's expression tighten with old pain, but Maddie continued on, oblivious or maybe just comfortable with her grief. Mom was really good at hair, and she made these cookies with chocolate chips and sea salt that were amazing. Dad tried to make them once, and they came out like hockey pucks. They weren't that bad, Noah muttered. Dad, we used one as a doorstop for 3 months. Victoria reached under the table and took Noah's hand, squeezing gently. He squeezed back, grateful. The pizza arrived, and they ate while Maddie regaled them with stories about her classmates, her teacher's weird obsession with grammar, and her plan to build an underwater research station in the backyard. It's going to have windows so I can watch fish, she explained, and a laboratory where I can study water samples, and maybe a submarine. That's very ambitious, Victoria said, completely charmed. Dad says I should dream big. He says Mom always told him that impossible just means nobody's figured out how yet. Noah's eyes were suspiciously bright. Your mom was a very smart woman. The smartest. Maddie took another slice of pizza. But Victoria seems pretty smart too. She ran a whole company. That's like being a captain of a ship, right? Something like that, Victoria agreed. Cool. You can help me figure out the submarine engineering. After dinner, as they walked to the parking lot, Maddie grabbed both their hands, swinging between them like she'd done this 1,000 times before. This was fun, she announced. Can we do it again? Victoria looked at Noah over Maddie's head. He was smiling, his expression full of hope and fear, and something that looked a lot like love. I'd really like that, Victoria said. Good. Next time you should come to our house. Dad will probably burn dinner, but we can order Chinese food, and you can see my research station. Maddie grinned up at her. Also, you should know that Dad's been cleaning the apartment like crazy all week. He even organized the junk drawer. He only does that when he's nervous about someone visiting. Maddie, oh my. Noah covered his face with his free hand. Victoria was laughing again, that loose, genuine laughter she'd almost forgotten how to produce. I promise not to judge the junk drawer. They reached the cars, and Maddie finally released their hands to give her father a hug. I like her, Dad. She's funny, and she knows about octopuses, and she doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid. She is pretty great, Noah agreed, pulling his daughter close. Maddie turned to Victoria and, without warning, wrapped her arms around Victoria's waist in a fierce hug. You can stay, she whispered, if you want to. Victoria's eyes burned with tears. She hugged Maddie back, feeling the small, solid warmth of her, the trust in that embrace. Thank you, she whispered back. After Noah buckled Maddie into his car and she was safely out of earshot, he walked back to Victoria. That was, he started. Wonderful, terrifying, perfect. Victoria blinked back tears. She's incredible, Noah. She likes you, really likes you. Noah cupped Victoria's face in his hands. Do you know how rare that is? She's been hostile to every woman I've even casually dated since Sarah died, but you... She opened up to you like you've always been part of our lives. I don't want to mess this up, Victoria said urgently. She's been through so much already. If I can't... Hey, Noah kissed her forehead. Stop catastrophizing. You heard her. She gave you permission to stay. That's huge. What if I disappoint her? Then you'll apologize and do better, like any parent does. Noah's smile was gentle. You don't have to be perfect, Victoria. You just have to show up and care. That's what matters. Victoria kissed him, pouring all her fear and hope and desperate want into it. When they pulled apart, Noah was breathing hard. Come to dinner Wednesday, he said. Real dinner. At our place. Let Maddie show you her research station and interrogate you about marine biology. Let me attempt to cook something edible. Let's just be together. Okay. Victoria felt like she was jumping off a cliff, but Noah's hands were steady, his eyes certain. Wednesday. She drove home in a daze, her mind replaying every moment. Maddie's gap-toothed grin, Noah's pride when his daughter scored goals, the casual way they'd both included her in their world like she'd always belonged there. Her apartment felt even emptier than before. Victoria walked through the silent rooms and tried to imagine Maddie here, her chaos and questions and boundless energy filling the sterile spaces. She couldn't. This place was designed for controlled perfection, not for the messy reality of life. Monday morning, Victoria's phone rang early. Martin's number. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Meridian's restructuring is even worse than we thought. They're gutting the innovation division entirely, 247 people, not 400. And they're doing it this Friday, not Monday. Victoria sat up sharply. That's illegal. They promised a 2-week notice period. They're claiming economic necessity. They've already drafted the termination letters. Martin sounded defeated. Victoria, these people have families. Some of them have been with the company for over a decade. And Meridian's going to cut them loose with 2 days' notice and minimal severance. Something fierce and protective blazed to life in Victoria's chest. No, they're not. There's nothing we can do. Like hell there isn't. Victoria was already opening her laptop, her mind racing through options. Martin, I need you to stall them, file an injunction, claim procedural violations, anything to delay the layoffs by even a few days. What are you planning? I'm going to save them. Victoria's voice was steel. Every single one of them. She spent the next 72 hours in a fury of activity, called in every favor she had left in the industry, reached out to competitors who'd tried to poach her employees for years, made pitch after pitch about skilled workers ready to start immediately, no recruitment costs, proven track records. By Wednesday afternoon, she'd placed 193 people. Not perfect, but better than she'd hoped. The remaining 54 were trickier, specialized roles, higher salaries. People Meridian had been specifically targeting to eliminate competition. Victoria was elbow-deep in spreadsheets and phone calls when her doorbell rang. She'd completely forgotten about dinner at Noah's. She opened the door to find him standing there with Maddie, both of them looking concerned. You didn't answer your phone, Noah said gently. We were worried. I'm sorry. I was working. I lost track of time. Victoria ran a hand through her hair, aware she probably looked terrible. She'd been wearing the same clothes for 2 days, surviving on coffee and determination. Working on what? Maddie peered past her into the apartment, eyes widening at the explosion of papers and laptops covering every surface. Trying to save people's jobs. Victoria heard how exhausted she sounded. I'm sorry, I should have called. Can we come in? Noah asked. Victoria stepped aside, embarrassed by the chaos. This wasn't the composed, controlled woman they'd been getting to know. This was the obsessive, driven side she usually hid. Maddie walked straight to the dining table covered in spreadsheets. Wow, this is a lot of names. 247 people who are about to lose their jobs, Victoria explained. I've placed most of them, but there are still 54 without options, and the layoffs happen Friday. Noah was looking at her with something that might have been awe. You've been doing this for 3 days straight? Someone has to. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. These are people who trusted me, who built their careers at my company.
I can't just let Meridian throw them away. Have you eaten? Noah asked quietly. Victoria tried to remember. Coffee counts as food, right? No, it doesn't. Noah was already moving toward her kitchen, Maddie trailing behind him. Maddie, can you find plates? On it. They moved through her sterile kitchen with practiced efficiency, and within 20 minutes, the smell of pasta filled the apartment. Noah had somehow created a meal from her nearly empty refrigerator. Sit, he ordered, guiding Victoria to the couch. Eat. Tell us about these 54 people. So she did. Between bites of the best pasta she'd ever tasted, Victoria explained the challenge. Specialized roles in logistics analytics, transportation optimization, supply chain integration. Skills that were valuable but niche, hard to place quickly. Maddie listened with surprising attention for an 8-year-old. So you need companies that do complicated delivery stuff? Essentially, yes. What about Dad's old company? They do logistics coordination. Victoria and Noah exchanged glances. Maddie, I don't think… No, wait. Noah pulled out his phone. She might be onto something. My former boss, David Chen, was always complaining about not being able to find qualified analysts. And I know he's been expanding their predictive modeling division. Would he talk to me? Victoria asked. For you? After what you're trying to do? Noah was already dialing. He'd be an idiot not to. 20 minutes later, Victoria had a potential placement for 15 more people. David Chen not only wanted to interview them, he was willing to fast-track the hiring process if they were as good as Noah promised. That's 39 left, Maddie calculated, because apparently she'd been keeping count. What about the others? Victoria looked at this little girl with Noah's eyes and fierce determination and felt something shift in her chest. I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, Noah corrected. You don't have to do this alone. For the first time in 72 hours, Victoria felt the crushing weight lift slightly. I don't know how to accept help. Lucky for you, we're very pushy about giving it. Noah settled beside her on the couch, Maddie climbing into his lap. Tell us about the remaining 39. Maybe fresh eyes will see something you've missed. They worked through the list together, brainstorming options, making connections Victoria hadn't considered. Maddie asked surprisingly insightful questions for an 8-year-old, and Noah's experience in logistics gave him perspective Victoria lacked. By midnight, they'd identified potential placements for 22 more people. 17 still remained, but it was progress. Maddie had fallen asleep curled against her father, her face peaceful in rest. Noah looked down at her with infinite tenderness. I should get her home, he said quietly. But Victoria, what you're doing, it's extraordinary. It's just the right thing. No, it's more than that. You lost your company, and instead of being bitter or defeated, you're fighting for people who probably don't even know you're doing this. Noah reached across his sleeping daughter to take Victoria's hand. You keep saying you don't know how to be happy or good or worthy of love, but this is all of those things. Can't you see that? Victoria looked at their joined hands, at Maddie sleeping peacefully, at the chaos of her apartment transformed into something purposeful. I'm starting to. Good. Noah kissed her knuckles. Because I'm falling for you, Victoria Hale, hard and fast and completely, and I need you to know that. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they felt like coming home. I'm falling for you too, she whispered. Both of you. Noah's smile was brilliant, even in the dim light. Then let's keep falling together. And Thursday, we're going to place those last 17 people. I promise. He carried Maddie to his car, the little girl barely stirring. Before he left, he kissed Victoria one more time, soft and sweet and full of promise. Get some sleep, he murmured against her lips. Tomorrow, we finish this. After they left, Victoria looked around at her transformed apartment, at the evidence of caring scattered across every surface. For the first time since losing her company, she felt like herself again. Not the CEO, not the corporate warrior, just herself, flawed and driven and learning how to let people in. And it felt like enough. Victoria woke Thursday morning to sunlight streaming through her windows and the smell of coffee brewing in her kitchen. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember why there would be coffee or why her apartment smelled like cinnamon and something baking. Then she heard Maddie's voice, bright and cheerful, saying, Dad, I think the muffins are done.
They smell good. Victoria sat up, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. She'd given Noah a spare key last night before he left, half joking that he might need it if she passed out from exhaustion. Apparently he'd taken her seriously. She found them in her kitchen, Noah in jeans and a sweater, pulling a pan of muffins from her oven, and Maddie perched on a bar stool, swinging her legs and clutching a stuffed octopus that hadn't been there last night. "Good morning," Noah said, looking up with a smile that made Victoria's pulse quicken. "We brought reinforcements, coffee, muffins, and Maddie's strategic planning skills." "I made a chart," Maddie announced, holding up a piece of paper covered in surprisingly neat handwriting. 17 people, color-coded by specialty. Green is easy to place, yellow is medium, red is hard. Victoria moved closer, accepting the coffee Noah handed her. The chart was actually quite brilliant. Maddie had organized the remaining employees by skill set and identified patterns Victoria had been too exhausted to see. "How did you do this?" she asked. "I'm good at patterns. Dad says I get it from Mom. She was really good at organizing things." Maddie pointed to the green section. "These 5 people all do the same kind of analysis stuff. Maybe they could go to the same company as a team. Companies like teams because they already work together." It was so obvious that Victoria couldn't believe she hadn't thought of it. "That's brilliant." "I know." Maddie said it without arrogance, just matter-of-fact confidence. "The yellow ones might need more convincing, but Dad has ideas about that." Noah set a muffin in front of Victoria. "Eat first, then we strategize." The muffin was still warm, studded with blueberries and topped with a cinnamon sugar crust. Victoria took a bite and nearly moaned. "Where did you learn to bake like this?" YouTube, desperation, and Maddie's brutal honesty when things taste terrible. Noah poured himself coffee. "After Sarah died, I had to learn fast. Turns out baking is just chemistry, and I was decent at chemistry in school." They spent the morning working through the list with renewed energy. Maddie's color coding system helped them identify opportunities Victoria had missed. The 5-person analytics team could indeed be pitched as a package deal. 3 of the yellow-coded specialists had overlapping skills that made them attractive to mid-sized companies looking to build capabilities. By noon, Victoria had made 11 more placements. 6 people remained. 6 people. "Tell me about the red ones," Maddie said, studying the chart with serious concentration. "Why are they hardest?" Victoria pulled up their profiles. "They're senior level with very specific expertise. 2 are in predictive modeling for cold chain logistics. That's keeping temperature-sensitive products safe during shipping. 3 specialize in last-mile optimization for urban delivery. 1 is an expert in sustainable transportation policy." "So they're really, really good at specialized stuff," Maddie summarized. "Exactly, which makes them expensive to hire and harder to place quickly." Maddie tapped her octopus against her chin, thinking. What if they didn't work for a company? What if they worked for themselves? Noah and Victoria exchanged glances. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Noah asked. "Well, you work for yourself, Dad. You drive for people who need drivers. What if these people did consulting for companies that need their special skills but can't afford to hire them full-time?" Victoria felt something click into place. That's actually not a bad idea. If they formed an independent consulting group, they could contract with multiple companies, maintain their income, and have more flexibility. "Could you help them do that?" Noah asked. "I could." Victoria was already making mental notes. "I know dozens of companies that would pay premium rates for that kind of expertise on a project basis, and I could provide the initial client connections to get them started." "So you'd be like their agent," Maddie said, "making sure they have customers." Something like that. Victoria looked at this 8-year-old who'd just solved a problem that had been keeping her up for nights. "You're kind of a genius, you know that?" Maddie grinned. "Dad says I get that from Mom, too." By late afternoon, Victoria had pitched the consulting group concept to all 6 remaining employees. 4 were interested immediately. The other 2 needed time to think about it, but they had until tomorrow to decide, which was still better than being laid off with no options. 245 people placed or given viable alternatives, Noah said, looking at the updated spreadsheet. In less than a week. Do you understand how incredible that is? Victoria felt tears stinging her eyes. "It's not all of them. It's close enough that you can be proud." Noah pulled her into his arms, and Victoria let herself lean into him. exhausted but relieved. You did this, Victoria. You saved them. We did it, she corrected, looking over at Maddie. I couldn't have done it without help. Maddie beamed. Does this mean we're a team now? Yeah, Victoria said softly. I think we are. That evening, they ordered Chinese food and ate it sitting on Victoria's living room floor because Maddie insisted it was more fun than using the dining table. They played a board game that Maddie won with ruthless efficiency, then watched a nature documentary about octopuses that had Maddie providing running commentary on scientific accuracy. When Maddie finally fell asleep curled up on the couch, Noah carried her to Victoria's guest room and tucked her in with gentle care. I should probably get her home, he said, but he didn't move toward the door. Or you could stay. Victoria's heart was pounding. Both of you. It's late, and she's already asleep. Noah studied her face in the dim light. Are you sure? I'm sure. Victoria took his hand. I like having you here. Having both of you here. It makes this place feel less empty. It's not the place that was empty, Noah said gently. It was your life. But you're filling it now with purpose, with people who matter, with all the messy, complicated things that make life worth living. They sat together on the couch, Victoria curled into Noah's side, his arm around her shoulders. For a long time, they just breathed together in comfortable silence. I got a call today, Victoria said finally, from a headhunter. 3 different companies want to interview me for CEO positions. She felt Noah tense slightly. That's good, right? It should be. A week ago, I would have jumped at any of them. Victoria traced patterns on Noah's hand. But now I keep thinking about what you said, about happiness being small moments strung together, about life being more than just achievement. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not defined by a job title. She looked up at him. Is that okay? That I don't have a plan for once? Noah kissed her forehead. It's more than okay, it's healthy. I've been thinking about the consulting group, the 6 people who are considering it. Victoria's words came slowly, carefully, as if she was discovering them as she spoke. What if I didn't just connect them with clients? What if I actually built something with them? A legitimate consultancy, employee-owned, focused on sustainable logistics and ethical business practices. Noah pulled back to look at her. You want to start another company? Not like before? Not something I control and consume my entire life. Something collaborative, something that actually helps people instead of just generating profit. Victoria felt excitement building. I have the connections, the industry knowledge, the reputation. Even after losing Hale Logistics, people still respect what I built. And these 6 people have expertise that companies desperately need. We could do something meaningful. You could, Noah agreed. The question is, do you want to? Victoria thought about the past week, about fighting for employees who'd never know she was protecting them, about Maddie's gap-toothed grin and Noah's steady presence, and the way helping others had filled something inside her that success never had. Yeah, she said, I think I do, but differently this time. Work-life balance, reasonable hours, time for the people and things that actually matter. Noah's smile was brilliant. Then you should do it, and I'll support you however I can. You already have. You and Maddie both. Victoria kissed him, soft and sweet and full of gratitude. I don't think I could have done any of this without you. Yes, you could have. You're the strongest person I know. Noah cupped her face in his hands. But I'm glad you didn't have to. I'm glad we found each other. They fell asleep on the couch together, wrapped around each other like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Friday morning arrived with a mixture of anxiety and determination. This was the day Meridian would execute their layoffs. But Victoria had one more card to play. She'd spent the previous evening composing a letter to every major business publication and industry newsletter, detailing exactly what Meridian Capital had done. The hostile takeover, the promised job protections they'd violated, the 247 skilled professionals they were discarding to inflate short-term profits. But more importantly, she detailed what happened next. How those professionals were already placed in better positions, or forming innovative consulting groups, or joining companies that actually valued their expertise. how Meridian's attempt to gut Hale Logistics had actually strengthened the industry by distributing talent more widely. The letter went viral within hours. By noon, Victoria's phone was ringing constantly. Media outlets wanted interviews. Former employees called to thank her, many in tears. Companies that had hired her people reached out to express admiration for her integrity. And Meridian Capital's stock price began to drop as investors realized they'd acquired a gutted company with a damaged reputation. Martin called, his voice stunned. "Victoria, do you know what you've done?" "I told the truth. You've made Meridian a pariah. 3 major investors just pulled out of deals with them. Patricia Morrison is furious. She's threatening lawsuits." "Let her threaten. Everything I wrote is documented fact." Victoria felt calm, centered, more like herself than she had in years. "How many of our people got their termination notices?" 2. Everyone else either already had new positions or withdrew their resignations to join your consulting group. Martin laughed, sounding almost giddy. "You did it. You actually saved them all." After she hung up, Victoria stood at her window looking out at the city. A week ago, she'd been driven to a resort by a stranger, desperate and defeated, convinced her life was ending. Now she stood here with a new venture forming, 245 people protected, and a relationship that felt more real than anything she'd experienced in her carefully controlled life. Her phone buzzed. "Noah. Maddie wants to celebrate. Dinner at our place tonight? Fair warning, I'm cooking and it might be terrible. I'll bring wine and low expectations." "Perfect. Also, I love you. Seemed like something you should know." Victoria stared at the message, her heart pounding. 3 words that should have terrified her. Instead, they felt like permission to want something beyond achievement and control. She typed back, "I love you too, both of you." The response came immediately. "Maddie says you have to come early so she can show you the improved research station. Also, she wants to practice French braids. Apparently that's very important. Tell her I'll be there at 5. And Noah? Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. The real me. And choosing to stay anyway." That was the easiest choice I ever made. Victoria spent the afternoon finalizing details for the consulting group, officially named Hale Collaborative, at the request of the 6 founding members who insisted her name still carried weight and integrity in the industry. She set up the legal structure, established initial client contracts, and created an operating agreement that ensured every member had equal voice and ownership. It felt nothing like building Hale Logistics had felt. That had been about proving herself, about showing the world she was worth something. This was about creating value for others, about using her skills and connections to help people thrive. It felt like purpose instead of performance. At 4:30, Victoria left her apartment and drove to Noah's neighborhood. The houses were modest, well-maintained, the kind of place where kids played in yards and neighbors actually knew each other's names. She pulled up to the address he'd given her, a small 2-story with a bright blue door and a yard dominated by what appeared to be a cardboard box submarine covered in Christmas lights. Before she could knock, the door flew open and Maddie launched herself forward for a hug. "You came early. Come see what I added to the research station." Maddie grabbed her hand and dragged her toward the backyard submarine. "I made a periscope out of toilet paper tubes and mirrors. It actually works." Noah appeared in the doorway, wearing an apron that said "Dad Jokes Loading" and holding a wooden spoon. "Hi, welcome to Chaos." "Hi." Victoria couldn't stop smiling. "I brought wine. You're my favorite person." Noah took the bottle, then pulled her in for a quick kiss. "Dinner's in 30 minutes. Try not to let Maddie recruit you into submarine maintenance. We have school tomorrow and she needs to actually sleep tonight." But Victoria let herself be recruited anyway, crawling into the cardboard submarine and peering through the toilet paper tube periscope while Maddie explained the research station's various features. There was a laboratory section with cups of water and food coloring, an observation deck made from a plastic storage container with holes cut in it, and detailed maps of the ocean floor drawn on poster board. "This is incredible," Victoria said honestly. "You built all this yourself?" "Dad helped with the structural engineering, but I designed it." Maddie's pride was evident. "Someday I'm going to build a real one and live underwater and study octopuses up close." "I believe you will." Maddie looked at her seriously. "Do you really? Most adults say that, but don't mean it." "I really do. You're brilliant and determined, and you don't let anyone tell you something's impossible. Those are the exact qualities that change the world. Maddie's answering smile was radiant. Then, with the characteristic abruptness of children, she asked, "Are you going to marry my dad?" Victoria felt her heart stop. We've only known each other a week. So, Dad knew Mom for 2 weeks before he asked her to marry him. He told me that story. Maddie tilted her head, studying Victoria with those two perceptive eyes. I think he wants to marry you. He gets this look when he talks about you, like you're the best thing that ever happened to him after me and Mom. Maddie, marriage is complicated.
Why? The question was genuinely curious. If you love each other and want to be together, what's complicated? You just decide to be a family, and then you are. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds, Victoria thought. It's not always that simple. It could be, though. Maddie moved closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. I'm just saying, if you did want to marry him, I would vote yes. You make him happy, and you're teaching me how to do French braids. Those are important qualifications. Victoria laughed, pulling Maddie into a hug. I'll keep that in mind. Dinner was surprisingly good. Noah had made chicken parmesan that was only slightly burned around the edges, with pasta and a salad that Maddie picked all the tomatoes out of. They ate at the kitchen table, surrounded by Maddie's artwork and school projects, and it was the most chaotic, imperfect, absolutely perfect meal Victoria had ever experienced. After dinner, Maddie insisted on showing Victoria her room, an explosion of marine biology posters, stuffed animals, and science books. Then she demanded that Victoria practice French braiding her hair, which resulted in several lopsided attempts before Victoria finally got it right. See, you're good at this, Maddie pronounced, examining the braid in her mirror. You should stay. Maddie, Noah said from the doorway, his voice gentle. Victoria has her own place. But she could stay here. We have a guest room. And then she could make me French braids every day and help with my science projects and make Dad less lonely. Maddie turned to Victoria with devastating honesty. Would you want to stay, if we asked? Victoria looked at this little girl with wild curls in her father's eyes, asking for something that should have terrified her. A week ago, the very idea of domestic life, of sharing space, of being accountable to other people's needs and schedules would have felt like a cage. Now it felt like coming home. I would want that very much, Victoria said carefully. But these things take time. We have to do it right. Make sure everyone's ready. I'm ready now, Maddie said. But okay, I can be patient. I waited 8 whole months for my research station grant from Dad, so I'm good at waiting. You got a research station grant? Victoria looked at Noah. He shrugged, smiling. She wrote a proposal explaining why it was important for her scientific development. How could I say no? After Maddie finally went to bed, a process that involved 3 glasses of water, 2 bathroom trips, and extensive negotiations about reading time, Noah and Victoria sat on the back porch, watching the Christmas lights twinkle on the submarine. She's relentless, Noah said fondly, like her mother was. Once Sarah decided she wanted something, she made it happen through sheer force of will. Maddie wants me to stay, Victoria said quietly. I heard. I'm sorry if that was too much pressure. It wasn't. Victoria took his hand. Noah, I need to tell you something. He turned to face her, concern flickering across his features. Okay, this past week has been the most disorienting, terrifying, transformative experience of my life. I lost everything I thought defined me. And somehow, in the middle of that loss, I found something I didn't even know I was looking for. Victoria's voice shook slightly. I found you, and Maddie, and the possibility of a life that's about more than just achievement. Noah was very still, listening. I'm not good at this, Victoria continued, at being vulnerable, at letting people in, at believing I deserve happiness. I'm probably going to mess up a lot, but I want to try. With you, with Maddie. I want to build something real. What are you saying? Noah's voice was rough with emotion. I'm saying that in 6 months, maybe a year, when we've had time to really know each other, when Maddie's had time to adjust to me being in her life consistently, when we're both sure this is what we want. Victoria took a breath. I want to marry you. I want to be Maddie's stepmom. I want to wake up in this house with the ridiculous submarine in the backyard
and help with science projects and learn how to be part of a family. Noah's eyes were bright with tears. You're serious? Completely. Terrifyingly serious. Victoria squeezed his hand. I love you, Noah Bennett. I love your daughter. I love the life you've built and the person you've helped me become. And I want to be part of that, if you'll have me. Noah pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. If I'll have you? Victoria, you're everything I didn't dare hope for. You're brilliant and fierce, and you're learning how to be soft, and watching you fall in love with Maddie is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. They kissed until they were both shaking, until the Christmas lights on the submarine seemed to pulse in rhythm with Victoria's heartbeat. 6 months, Noah said against her lips. That's how long you think we should wait? At least? Maybe longer. Maybe... I want to do this right. Okay, 6 months. Noah smiled. But I'm going to love you through every single day of that waiting. I'm counting on it. They sat together in the cool evening air, planning a future that felt both impossible and inevitable. Victoria would officially launch Hale Collaborative next month. Noah would continue his driving work, but transition into a logistics consultant role with the new company, using his experience to help build their operations. Maddie would get her French braids and her homework help, and eventually, the stepmother she was already treating like family. It wouldn't be perfect. There would be arguments and adjustments and moments of doubt, but it would be real and honest and built on a foundation of respect and love that Victoria had never experienced before. 3 months later, Victoria moved into Noah's house, not immediately into his bedroom because Maddie needed time to adjust, but into the guest room that slowly became hers. She learned to navigate the chaos of family dinners and school projects and soccer practices. She taught Maddie how to negotiate and present ideas professionally, while Maddie taught her how to find joy in puddles and cardboard boxes. Hale Collaborative thrived. The 6 founding members expanded to 12, then 20, building a reputation for ethical business practices and innovative solutions. Victoria worked reasonable hours and came home to family dinners instead of eating alone at her desk. 6 months after that first dinner, Noah proposed on the back porch while Maddie watched from her submarine periscope, ready to celebrate the moment Victoria said yes. The wedding was small, just close friends, and Maddie as the fiercely proud maid of honor who insisted on giving a speech about how she'd known from the beginning that Victoria was perfect for them. Victoria Hale Bennett stood in Noah's arms, their arms now, and thought about the night she'd hired a driver for $950 and 3 days of work. The night that had transformed her entire life. She'd lost a company worth millions. She'd gained a family worth everything. And sitting on the porch one evening, a year after they'd first met, with Maddie curled between them and the stars beginning to appear overhead, Maddie asked, "Mom? Can I call you Mom now?" Victoria's throat tightened with emotion. "I would love that." "Okay, Mom." Maddie said it like she was testing the word, finding it fit perfectly. "I was just thinking, if you hadn't lost your company, you never would have needed Dad to drive you, and then we wouldn't be a family." "That's true," Victoria agreed. "So sometimes losing things is actually finding things." Maddie looked up at her with those wise, perceptive eyes. "Like how octopuses can lose an arm, but grow it back stronger." Noah laughed. "Noah, I don't think that's exactly how human emotions work, sweetheart." "Sure it is," Maddie insisted. "Mom lost her old life but grew a new one with us. And it's better because now she has people who love her for real, not because she's successful." Victoria pulled Maddie closer, tears streaming down her face. "You're absolutely right. This is so much better." "I know." Maddie settled more comfortably between them. "I'm pretty smart about these things." They sat together as darkness fell, 3 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of loss and built something beautiful from the pieces. Victoria thought about the woman she'd been, driven, isolated, measuring worth in achievements and profit margins. That woman had been successful, but she'd been hollow. This woman, wife, stepmother, partner in a business that actually helped people, was filled to overflowing with purpose and love and messy, complicated, absolutely perfect life. Real wealth, she'd learned, was never about penthouses or power or corporate titles. It was about being chosen, about choosing to stay, about building something that mattered with people who saw you completely and loved you anyway. It was about a $950 job that changed everything, And as Noah kissed the top of her head and Maddie started planning their next submarine enhancement, Victoria finally understood what happiness felt like. It felt like this, like home, like family, like love. It felt like enough.